So, good afternoon and a warm welcome from me for our open lecture today. And actually, in fact, we frame it the ESMT Aurora lecture. It has to do with the fact that we're very delighted to welcome the winner of the Aurora Prize in 2017. As for those of you who don't know, the Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity is awarded to those organizations and individuals whose actions have had an exceptional impact on preserving human life and advancing humanitarian causes. This includes, and I would say includes in a very particular way, today's speaker, Dr. Katina, who was awarded the prize last year for his life-saving work in Sudan, something we'll obviously hear more about. Tom will share reflections on this, on his experience, on his expertise, on the challenges, also the international collaborations that have taken place over the last decade. So maybe just a few words on us. ESMT, as you know, is a business school at a very special place. I always call it one of the nicest ironies of German history, that at a place where the headquarters of socialism on German soil resided, there's now a privately run business school with a very international focus, students from all over the world, faculty members from more than 15 different countries around the world. So therefore, this is actually probably a very vivid example of disruption as it has taken place in Berlin and beyond. We've had open lecture series for a number of years to always showcase exceptional leaders whose contribution goes far beyond their own profession, beyond their own professional expertise. And I would say Dr. Katina is a great example for that. So just in terms of a number of statistics, Dr. Katina is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at the Mother of Mercy Catholic Hospital in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan, where he oversees the care of 750,000 citizens. The ongoing civil war, certainly which we will hear more, has left thousands, maybe tens of thousands in hardship. And nonetheless, and in particular in this environment, despite all these challenges, Tom manages to treat over 500 patients per day and performs over 1,000 operations, surgeries each year. So also from the pure numbers in such a challenging, in such a difficult environment, you see the great achievement, and you also see, and I can just say congratulations also to Aurora for finding such a worthy recipient for the prize in 2017. So therefore, it's a great delight, it's a great honor to welcome you here today for this open lecture. We look very much forward to your insights that you will share with us. And maybe before I'll go in the further introduction, please join me in very warmly welcoming Dr. Katina to this lecture. So before I hand over the microphone to our guest of honor, I would also like to introduce two distinguished figures, people who would like to lead us to the discussion. First of all, I would like to very warmly welcome Professor Wolfgang Huber, the former chair of the EKD, the Evangelische Kirche in Deutschland, and Professor Detlev Ganten, the current president of the World Health Summit. As you, I think, both don't really need a real introduction, but nonetheless, let me nonetheless do this a little bit. Professor Huber is, as you know, a professor of theology. He has been, as I said, the chairman of the EKD in Germany, so the Evangelical Church in Germany. But I think what makes him or sets him apart is that he has always had a very important, a very inspiring view also on topics that go far beyond churches themselves. So I, for example, once seen a great contribution to a discussion that was on management compensation and how management compensation has developed. And I found this actually a very refreshing view. And so therefore, we are very delighted to welcome you here. And likewise, we are very delighted welcome back Professor Detlev Ganten. He's a specialist in pharmacology and molecular medicine, and the founding director of the Max Delbrück Center for Molecular Medicine in Berlin-Buch, which I also had the pleasure to once visit. And so you can also see with Professor Ganten to see not only an outstanding medical doctor, but also someone who has taken a fantastic managerial role in developing one of the leading clinics in Germany and beyond. Also since 2005, he's been the chairman of the board of trustees of the Charité Foundation, so the leading hospital not only in Berlin, but again, far beyond. So in that sense, we have three outstanding great speakers with us today. And I would first like to ask Professor Huber for his speech, then Professor Ganten, and then to start with our keynote speech by Tom Katina. Please, again, join me in very warmly welcoming our three keynote speakers. We look very much forward to your contribution. And again, we are very delighted to welcome you here. Thank you.
Dear Professor Rocholl, dear Tom Katina, students and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to give an introductory remark to this very important lecture we are waiting for from Tom Katina. I'm, as you heard, I was a church leader for a long time. I was a professor for theological ethics before, and I continue to work in the field of ethics. That has always the double effect that you have to work in theory, but in my understanding of ethics, you have also to be involved in practical affairs. And one of the practical fields I was confronted with during the last years was the Aurora initiative. I want to speak a little bit about, and that brought me together with Tom Katina, and that was a very, very moving experience when he came first. That was our first meeting at the Aurora Dialogue in Berlin last year, and to see him together with his wife now here in Berlin again is really wonderful, and thank you for coming to this city after really demanding days in Yerevan over the last weekend. Tom Katina works already since 2008 in Gidel in the Nuba Mountains as a physician at the Mother of Mercy Hospital. You hear by the name that this is a Christian hospital founded by a Catholic initiative in a religiously mixed region, so to speak. We have in Sudan Christians, but we have a Muslim government in the north of Sudan that tries also to dominate the Nuba Mountains, and you have a rebel regime there that tries to gain its independence and to realize a secular government not under the auspices of Sharia. So that is a very complicated political situation in which he works for the people, for the poorest and vulnerable population there, as it was already said, 24 hours, 7 days a week. How could it happen that somebody who concentrates so much on the concrete help for his people in a region of the world of which perhaps some of you didn't hear anything before, the Nuba Mountains and the political and social and economic situation. How could it happen that Tom Katina became known around the world? He comes from the United States, but that as such didn't make him famous. What was it? He is well known nowadays while the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative awarded him with the Aurora Humanitarian Award in 2017. That is an award for the unselfish commitment to vulnerable people. That is an award that tries to encourage people to work for others, and take their personal talents not only for themselves, but invest in a way that is of real help for other people. But what is the Aurora Initiative, you will ask now? The Aurora Initiative was founded in 2015 by Armenian philanthropists, partly living in Armenia, partly being parts of the Armenian diaspora that goes back to the tragic history of the Armenian people with several approaches to what I really will call the effort to annihilate the Armenian people by genocidal activities. That was not only once, but the most famous case was the Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1923, not acknowledged until today by the Turkish government, but executed by the Osmanic government of those days. And I have to admit at this place in Berlin that I have to regret also today that the German government, who was an ally of the Osmanic Empire, did not confront the Osmanic Empire with the break of all humanitarian and international law by these activities. It was a very important internal conflict in Germany about that until today. Perhaps you realized how difficult it was for the German parliament 90 and again 100 years after these events to declare openly, we regret this genocide and the way in which our own country was involved in it. Those three philanthropic persons said, well, we have to lament the victims of this genocide. But lament the victims of the past is not enough. We have to realize that there were members of the Armenian people who were saved. And we have to remember those who helped them to survive. And it's not enough to express the gratitude for those who were courageous enough to help people to evade the genocide. We have to ask, what are the consequences for today and tomorrow? The gratitude regarding the past has to be transformed into action for a better future. And therefore, they created the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative with different activities, which I do not want to describe in these short remarks. One of the activities is the Aurora Humanitarian Award, given in the years 2015 to 2023. That means exactly the 8 years, 100 years after the genocide, always to one person who stands in an exemplary manner for ways in which we can really make a difference with regard to the humanitarian situation of people nowadays, and who can become a role model for other people to follow in their situation, with their means, the same idea to help people to survive. For that purpose, it's not only the case that the person herself receives some money that can encourage the continuation of his or her activities, but this person is asked at the same time to name other initiatives who work in the same direction, and they will receive a lot of money for their work. So a chain of giving starts with 1.1 million euro related to the prize, only 100,000 euro, but that's also a lot goes to the receiver of the award, and 1 million go to other initiatives. And so they help to broaden the perspective. Aurora multiplies in this way possible humanitarian initiatives of different kinds. Let me end with naming the 3 recipients so far, because you see the variety of situations. Margarete Barankize founded the Maison Shalom and the Rema Hospital in Burundi, mainly for women in endangered situations. And this year, Ukya La-ung, a lawyer from Myanmar, who works since decades for the Rohingya in Myanmar, trying to fight for their rights, to live in Myanmar, not to be expelled, and to be respected in their identity and in their basic rights. A very important issue with a certain possibility to compare it with the situation of Armenians in former time. And in the middle of these 2 stays Tom Katina, with a very concrete project in a very endangered part of the divided Sudan. We have the independence of South Sudan, the strong regime and, in my view, unfair regime in North Sudan, and the Nuba Mountains in between. And he's there and is near to the people. I'm very grateful that I had the chance to meet Tom last year here and in the last days in an incredible celebration of the Aurora initiative. I will never forget, and I end for you with this picture. If you have an idea of the Mount Ararat and of his meaning for human history, the mountain where the Ark of Noah landed, the mountain of the Armenian people, but now a part of Turkey. And then you imagine that yesterday night, on the night from, no, the day before, of course, excuse me, flight, a night to Sunday, we were at the sunrise looking at the Ararat and celebrated the Aurora Humanitarian Award. And the Ararat, often surrounded by clouds, was completely clear, and the sunrise, or the aurora, was simply wonderful. Tom, I'm very glad that you now are here. Thank you very much.
All protocols observed. Jörg, thank you very much. I think it's a great idea to use the presence of Tom Katina here in Berlin to talk about what can be done in humanitarian ways and asking completely different people to contribute. Of course, Tom is the main person, and Bishop Huber, you know, talking about the Mount Ararat and ethics worldwide and the sky above us and the moral law inside us. I'm coming from a completely different area. I'm, as you mentioned, a medical doctor. Actually, we briefly talked. We met the first time today. When I was a student, I worked in North Africa in a hospital, and I worked in outpatient clinics in the Sahara. So I know a little bit what was going on, and I was very enthusiastic about it, but I decided to follow a scientific career in the laboratory and then work on small molecules and then went into management. And finally, as you mentioned, I organized the World Health Summit. And I thought that was the most important thing I did in my life. Get stakeholders from all over the world under the patronage of Chancellor Merkel, President of the French Republic, and President of the European Union. We would even invite the President of the United States if he would be willing to come and discuss in a non-violent and reliable way what can be done about health. So this is a very high level of abstraction. And the question is, and I think this is a question, you are all young people. And I actually brought one of our bright students from Canada with me, Grace Dirks, to see what's going on in Berlin. And today, what can we do to improve the human condition? Is the best to kind of sit at the strategic seat in a wonderful office and work on the computer, write mails and organize a program and perhaps organize some strategies, what could be done? Or is it better to pull up the sleeves, go to where the need is and work in the hospital and help the people who come and need help? My conclusion is both is necessary. But if we don't have the examples, then kind of the inspiration for those who are sitting somewhere in the quiet office and do other kinds of work, they will not have the enthusiasm and they will not be able to see what's really going on if you just conceive it on paper. So, and Tom Katina is the person who really took the completely different way of working, you know, saying, you know, I take a quote, simply, you do the duty as a human to help others. That's said simply, but it's not so easy to do all the time. So he felt called as a missionary, as we have heard, and in addition to his Catholic belief, he thought combining that with medicine is perhaps not a bad idea. So you have two ways to help. And he went to one of the top medical institutions in the United States, and Duke University, which I happen to know very well, one of the top institutions. So he got a very good medical education. And then he arrived in the year 2000, we have heard that, in Africa. And the following 7 years he spent in a hospital in Kenya. And it was then in Kenya when he heard about a Sudanese bishop opening a hospital in Sudan's Nuba Mountains that he moved to Nuba. He was asked to go and he went without much reflection. And for the last 10 years, Dr. Tom, as I've heard, he is called by his patients and his friends in Nuba, was the only permanent doctor at the today 435 hospital beds, the Mother of Mercy Hospital, as we have heard already, in the conflict zone of the Sudan, dominated by the rebels, as we have discussed. And then, of course, again, a discussion could be what's the formal government and what are the rebels and what are the ethics behind two governments. He's on call every time, and I know that, you know, that's actually the same in the Charité and others. A medical doctor, we have working hours, but if need is there, we go and we help. If not us, we have, of course, colleagues who step in if that is necessary. And he is mainly in surgery. We didn't discuss any details of what you're doing, but I know if you have a big hospital, and if there's surgery to be done, then of course, usually that is urgent, but anything else, if you are the only doctor, you know everything you can do and what is needed. Being in such a conflict zone is difficult. Of course, you have to accommodate with the situation, and you have to get the materials and everything you need to do what you want to do. And this cannot be done alone. You do need international help. And this is, I think, where the Aurora Prize is helping, because it gives you visibility in the Nuba Mountains. Many people not too many people visit you probably there. So you need visibility, and you need a standing, and you need an authority which is conveyed or additionally conveyed by such a prize. And of course also the Catholic Church hopefully does, and the other churches. We think about ecumene and collaboration of all religions, of course, as however they are organized, hopefully help, and I'm sure they do. I understand that it's a war region, and there's bombing going on, there's war action going on, and one day apparently has been a bombing in the area of the hospital and in this region. And I know that many of you come from abroad, but our generation, we still know what bombing of cities means and how much suffering can be inflicted upon the population and on the infrastructure. And you can only be complimented on what you do in this danger. And I mean, your life is not safe if you never know where the bombs go, and they're usually not that precise. So it's not only the life of other people, it's your own life which is endangered, and I think it's fantastic to have examples like you who stay there in this place and do what can be done and what needs to be done. This really makes a difference between life and death, and having somebody who is on the side of life and defending that and giving the example, I think cannot be overestimated. And this way, Tom Katina has become the living symbol of a new, genuine narrative in the international debate on foreign aid. And I know what I'm talking about. The budgets, and you know that, are decreasing all the time. Some of the budgets, for example, in the United States, have become extremely unreliable, and unreliable is even worse sometimes than if you know there is a fixed budget, but you can rely on what's being on there. And the world is not in good order, as we all know, and you are suffering more than many others from this unreliability of international politics. Big economies, United States, United Kingdom, European countries, Germany, Japan, China, not so many countries who really contribute, and these budgets are being cut. And this is actually an area where collaboration is extremely important for those who sit kind of in the strategic part of the whole question, and those who work at the front with the people. And this is, you know, the arguments, the narrative are extremely important to convince people not to leave it to others, but get engaged themselves. And for this, Tom Katina is a wonderful example. And as he says, a worrying message that leading economies are no longer interested in being part of the efforts to mitigate human suffering is one of the big problems. And he adds, too much of the money is also getting lost in bureaucracy, and sometimes in many countries, of course, not only bureaucracy, but also in corruption and actually violence and other things. Tom Katina grants us an insight into the reality of healthcare in countries in need, where every penny is improving the situation, every penny is improving the situation and helping to save lives. An insight that would remain unnoticed if it would not be for outstanding individuals like you and your wife. I know it's always a family and it's friends, it's the doctor himself, but the doctor himself, if he doesn't have the aid, he won't be able to do what he would like to do. Individuals like you dedicate their time on this planet in a very direct way, and you are aware of this ability and the need, and by this you not just work locally, but you also influence, as I mentioned, the big picture and also influence political action, which is so much needed. You, Tom Katina, is the embodiment of proof that there are people out there doing incredible work around the world every day to help preserve human lives. Very rightfully, you were awarded the 2017 Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity, as we have heard, which is what brings us here today. We are very fortunate to be able to hear firsthand what is going on in Sudan and in many places in the world, far from here, but close to our heart. Let us carefully listen to your lecture, your experience. Let us pay attention to the message you have for all of us, especially also the young students. And please now welcome Tom Katina. Dear Tom, the floor is yours.
The thing that impresses me about the Nuba is their sense of independence and their feeling of pride, but we have a sense of dignity. We are humans. We're the equal to anybody else. I love that about them. When the war started, this is June 2011, most of the humanitarian organizations, there weren't so many, but the ones that were here in the mountains, most of them left. Some of the hospital staff, the expatriate staff left. I stayed behind, Amoni's sister stayed behind, and the priest stayed behind. We all felt the same thing. We felt this is really the moment of need for the people here. All that time when I was the only doctor, I was responsible for all the patient wards. So I was the doctor doing the rounds and following the progress and taking care of them. You know, one thing that really helped was the staff really pulled together. When those things happen, you say, I'll do any other job in the world. Let me be an accountant, because books don't bleed, people don't die, you're just doing numbers. And your brain is just on fire. And then something brings you back. Whatever, some kid comes up or somebody that you didn't think would do well survives. You're like, come on, man, just grow up, just do your job, you gotta do it. Children give you life. That's a source of life. And just their attitude, their cheerfulness. Kids just want to be normal, they want to play. When you have a kid and he's badly burned or badly wounded or whatever, and once he starts improving, wants to start playing with you and can joke with you, can tickle the kid, he'll tickle you back, he'll joke around with you. This just gives you energy to continue on with life. A goal of mine to achieve would be, one, if the hospital here continues to grow, I would love to see it as an academic institution. Teaching hospital in really the middle of the bush. So people come here to learn, send people out for their work. So this is an academic center for training. I would love to see that in the future. Everybody have the spark of God in us. So use that spark. You, individual, you have that within you. You can do something. What it normally takes is a will. Care about another human being. You care deeply about another person.
Wow, thank you very much. Is it, what do you say, all protocols observed? I like that. So welcome to everybody here. I really feel honored to be able to talk to you all today. What I want to do is just kind of fill in the gaps of what our two predecessors said and leave most of the time for question and answer. Is that okay with everybody? I want to have a very informal atmosphere. I want you to feel free to ask questions. I think we'll all learn better that way. Are you all graduate students? Most of you grad students in the school here? Is the majority of folks? You're a mixture of graduate, undergraduate? Okay, great. Well, just another brief background to add on to what was already said. My name is Tom Katina. I'm a medical doctor and surgeon. I'm a lay missionary with the church. I'm also a third order Franciscan in the lineage of St. Francis of Assisi, who lived in Italy 1,200 years ago. I've been in Africa since January of 2000. I'm under the Catholic Medical Mission Board. I'm a lay missionary with them. Initially, I was in Kenya for several years, and then took the chance to come to Sudan to start this hospital from the ground up, along with some other staff. It's been an incredible challenge from the beginning. The initial plan was we'd have an 80-bed referral hospital. Now we're 435 beds. And we did that without really much of a change in the higher level staff of the hospital. We started out with 3 or 4 expatriate nurses, myself, and 15 on-the-job trained Nuba staff, and we're the ones that had to train them on the job. When these Nuba first started, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't weigh a patient. We gave them a weighing scale, and they didn't know how to use it. We gave them a thermometer to check a patient's temperature. They couldn't do that. They didn't have any skills, so we had to teach them all that stuff. Now, 10 years later, we have about 25 trained nurses. My wife is one of them. We sent them all to school. We still have a lot of on-the-job trained staff. We have about 25 nurses. We have 6 clinical officers, which are like junior doctors. We have 23 currently in school that we're training. So we've come quite a long way. When we started, you know, it's interesting. We thought, okay, we're going to Sudan to start this hospital. People will welcome us with open arms. They'll do a great job. We got there, and it's like the people there didn't want us. It was a very strange feeling. The local government was against us. The Secretary of Health was against us. We couldn't figure out what the problem was. I think in the end, the Nuba are people who have been persecuted for centuries, and we coming from the outside looked at us with very suspicious eyes. Who are these people? What are they coming to do? So it was a bit of a shock for us. It took us about 3 or 4 years to gain their trust. One turning point, just to give you a little bit of a story, we had the local, local mayor, they call him the Payam administrator. He was really, I don't know what it was, but he just didn't want us there for some reason. And he really was an obstacle. Then one day, his wife came. Actually, I think it was his second wife. He has 3 wives. They were polygamists there. She came to the hospital, and she had a certain condition called amidst abortion, where she was pregnant, and the baby died inside of her, and we had to do a DNC to take out the dead baby. And we did that, and afterwards, she had some very heavy bleeding. And I just happened to pass by the ward. It was about 6 o'clock at night, and we don't have trained staff, so they can't recognize these things. So I went by I'm walking by her bed. I go over, I say, how you doing? And she's lying in bed, like doing the backstroke in a pool of blood. I mean, she was hemorrhaging. So we start running around and, you know, trying to transfuse her like crazy people. And we ended up transfusing her with 8 units of blood. Her brother-in-law would not give blood for her. This is part of the local beliefs there. They feel if they give blood, they're going to die. So I gave my blood, we transfused her, she survives. So from that point on, the local mayor started to warm up a bit to us. So it's kind of a big change for us there in the local government. And then, of course, as time went on, June 2011, civil war started again in the Nuba Mountains. And the fact that we stayed, myself and the other missionaries, the sisters and the priests, this gained us a lot of credibility with the local people. So from that point on, I think we finally gained their trust, and we've worked quite well together. Our situation, we've been now, that's June 2011, now we're in June 2018, so 7 years of civil war. The past year has been a bit better. There's not been any more air bombardment or ground fighting in the past year, although just before my wife and I came out here, there were a lot of rumors that the Sudan army was massing just at our periphery, ready to attack again, and I think that's probably going to happen. But it's been a bit of a respite this past year. We're in a rebel-held territory, if you can imagine. We're in Sudan. We're not in South Sudan, and we're in an enclave that's sort of carved out of Sudan, held by the SPLA North rebels. We're in civil war against the central government, which is in Khartoum. The issues are one of marginalization. The Nuba people are kept in the periphery of the society. If you talk to some of the older people, including my wife's mother, they have memories of when they were kids. They remember the Arabs coming, and Arabs is a word they use for them, but the people from the north coming and taking people away as slaves. They would tie something around their neck, tie them by ropes together, and lead them like animals along the path there. So these are very stark memories for the people there. And it's a big factor now because when we talk about making peace with the north, these issues have to be included. These are people who do not trust the people in the north. Without that, you can't start to make the peace process go. Anyway, that's about where our situation is now. I want to just give you a few points of things I think I've learned over the years of being there. And in a way, it's a bit of an advice, but I know some of you guys are my age or older, so I don't always think I'm giving advice to older people. I'm sorry for that. But my first point is, these are things that I thought about that I think have helped me a lot in our situation, but I think they apply to everybody. My first point is, life is hard. And I think we forget that sometimes, that we wake up, and I mean, especially us in America, we're such optimists and we think everything should be perfect, that life is actually hard, it's difficult. We have to expect difficulties and challenges. And when they come, don't be surprised with them. Accept it as it is and work through it. I think one of the beautiful things about the Nuba people, and this is for really a lot of people in Africa in general, but especially the Nuba, they're used to hardship. So when something bad happens to them, they don't sit there and wail and cry and say, why'd this happen to me? They say, this is how life is, and they go ahead with life. It's amazing. So I think what I've learned a lot from the Nuba is that life is hard, bad things happen, suck it up, accept it, and go on with your life. Don't be trapped in this self-pity. I think that applies for everybody, whether you're here in Germany, whether you're in Nuba, whether in the US. Everybody has his or her own challenges. The second point fits in quite a bit with Aurora, but it's develop a sense of gratitude. And it's been shown by studies that the happiest people are people that have gratitude. They're able to say thank you and give thanks for things that have happened. And I think all of us here, by virtue of the fact that we're here in this room, have been given a lot in this life. And when I tell people and say, why are you in Sudan? What are you doing? I look at it quite simply. I grew up in the U.S. We've got a huge family. My parents had 7 kids. We all love each other, very supportive family. I had the chance for the best education. There's something not right. Why am I given all these benefits in life? I don't understand it. Why has God blessed me with all these things? But I think in the end, I was given a lot. It's my obligation to give that back somehow. And the way I'm doing it is by going to Sudan and taking care of people there. Each of us has something you can contribute. All of us have been given a lot in this life, just by the fact we're here today, able to understand me speaking English. I think none of you are native English speakers. You're all educated. Third point is your capacity to work and get things done is way beyond what you think it is. I'm telling you this from my personal experience. Before I went to Sudan, I never thought I'd be able to manage this number of patients and do this amount of work. But I think our capacity to get things done depends on how many tasks we're given. You can do a whole lot more than you think you're capable of. So believe that in yourself, that you can do it. The next point I think is very, very important for us from the Western world is don't become bitter and cynical as you get older. I think it's a natural tendency. We get older, we get cranky, we become curmudgeons as we get older. Don't let that happen to you. Keep that sense of idealism you had when you're young. I mean, I had it when I was 20, and I hope to think I still have it, that I think I'm still idealistic, that we can get things done, that people in general are good, people have goodwill. Last point I want to say before I babble on too long is keep an open mind about belief in God. I'm not here to tell you what to believe in, okay? Yeah, I'm a missionary. My thinking as a missionary is I want to show the love of Christ to other people. Kalas, that's enough. And this quote has been attributed to St. Francis. I love this quote. But apparently he said, preach always and sometimes use words. So I always think of that. People ask, well, you're a missionary. What does that mean? Show by your actions. Show your love by your actions and what you're doing, and people will see Christ in you. But keep an open mind about belief. And I'm telling you that from my personal experience. My faith in God has been the only thing that sustained me during these dark hours. And sometimes things get so bad you just want to do anything else but be where you are. But I say no. I believe in God. God is with us, and we go ahead. The people of Nuba Mountains, whether they're Christian or they're animist or they're Muslim, have a very strong belief in God, and that really is what keeps them going. And I think I want to stop there. I see people dozing off a bit, so I don't want to go on too long. I would really like to have your questions and have this be a bit interactive. We have, I think, a fairly good chunk of time. So, Jörg, you want to come with me here? Is that okay with everybody? I don't want to make it such a formal lecture and go on and on. So, great, we have a question. Yes, thank you so much.
Tom, would you like to?
Should I sit down?
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
So
Yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
This thing is a microphone too?
Yeah, it is. It is.
I've been in the bush too long. I'm not used to this stuff here.
So maybe before, let me maybe take the privilege of asking the first question. And first of all, I would like to congratulate you, I think, on behalf of everyone here for the fantastic things you've done, you keep doing. So maybe a very general question to start with. What is it that we, who are here in the audience, but maybe also those outside, what could we do best to help you in this magnificent effort you're undertaking and the great achievements you're contributing?
Great. So that's a great question from York. So when I first heard that I was supposed to come and give a lecture to a management school, I was terrified. I thought, I'm a medical guy. I take care of sick people. What can I teach or talk to you guys about? But then when I was in Armenia, one of the co-founders of the Aurora Prize, this guy, and he said he's like a billionaire, but he's like, he's a businessman, he's a social entrepreneur. I thought, this is great. I thought, that's a link. So the work we do, my wife is a nurse, I'm a doctor, we have whatever, we can't do anything without support, without money, without help with logistics, without management skills. So what I hope is that we can come up with ways where you guys can help us in the field. This idea of social entrepreneurship. How do we keep things going in a place that has no resources, where people can't pay for medical care? What are some solutions to these problems? How do we keep funding coming in? I think you guys with your management brains can help with this. I can't. My brain is too stiff. I'm just, if somebody's bleeding, I can stop it. But to think about how to get money for the hospital, this one kills me. So I think this is a way we can have some cooperation. I mean, I think I was excited when I heard about this, and then I thought, okay, now I have something to talk about. I wasn't so afraid about talking to your group.
Thank you. So this is certainly a mandate we will take with us and try to also give an answer to this question. Right. So maybe shall we open up for questions? And we'd like to invite any. I think we had one. Oh, I covered. So sorry.
Some of my ground. Is this on? So the maybe to extend it, and that is, how has the visibility of the award already brought some attention or support to the work that you're doing, and how have you, I mean, I recall that there was some part of this that's the multiplier, right? So
right.
You're also extending your prize to others in the area, so if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, well, first off, actually the only reason that we're able to keep the hospital gates open this year is because of the Aurora Prize. Part of the money that one of the beneficiaries got, they put back into the hospital, so that's what we're using to buy all the drugs and supplies for 2018. For salaries, we're using money that was, a lot of it raised through publicity from the Aurora Prize. So short term, it's at least gotten us through this year, given us some breathing room. Going forward, mostly as a result of publicity, we're able to raise some money to keep us going over the next several years, and we hope it'll bring some medical personnel in to be kind of an in-kind donation to the hospital. It's interesting because at the same time the Aurora Prize came down last year, around the same time, most of our institutional donors dropped out for various reasons. And this is something else we could talk about in terms of funding requirements and paperwork and all this kind of bureaucracy stuff. A lot of them dropped out. We had 27 donors a few years ago, and that dropped down to about 4. Now it's down to like 2. So we have these big institutional donors all dropped out. So at the same time that happened, Aurora Prize came, we were able to get funding to keep going. So for me, this is the hand of God working as a believer, or coincidence, whatever you want to call it. But we've been able to keep going. I think the Aurora has been a huge part of that. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe if you could hand the microphone.
I have 2 questions. One is, does the Catholic Church actually help you, and even the church from your neighborhood? Do you have that of your world? Are they helping to support you? And the second question is whether or not you have children.
Yeah.
And how you manage that.
Right, thank you. So first question is the Catholic Church helping us out? Yes, they have. Most of these donors that have dropped out are from the Caritas Network, which is a Catholic network, the charitable branch of the church. They have offered a lot of support over the years, and some of them have dropped out, but we're trying to pick up other ones now. The local church doesn't have the resources in Nuba. This area is, I mean, it does have some cash, but it's almost a cashless society. There's very little money available, especially now because of the conflict. If there's no fighting, there's a little bit more business going on, a little bit more money that's available in the area. But right now, there's not enough cash available in the community to support us. The second question, no, we don't have children yet. We married 2 years. We married May 2016. A lot of interesting stories around our wedding. I know I might anger some of you guys here, but I had to follow the practices. I had to pay a big dowry for my wife. I know that might anger some of you, but I had to do it. If I wanted to get this beautiful lady, there was no other way to do it. We were married May 2016. We don't have any children yet. But we really want to have children. If you are praying people, pray for us, because we really need a child. And we'd like to raise the child in Nuba Mountains. And with other issues that come up, education, other things, I don't know. We have another friend of ours who is an American guy married to a Nuba woman. He's back in the U.S. now. He's got 2 kids. They want to come back eventually, and he wants to set up some kind of educational system. So we hope to have children, and we're banking on him to come back and set up a good school system for the kids, and we'll see. So. Well, no, our local parish. Not so much. My younger brother's a priest. His parish has sent us money. My hometown has actually helped quite a bit. They organize every Thanksgiving they have a 5K run, and they raise quite a bit of money during that 5K run. But it's not so much through the churches. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, please.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. My question centers around, you mentioned your vision to have a teaching hospital and all the work that you've done so far to expand the nursing program and whatnot. I'd love to hear more about that and how you're able to split your time and the time of sort of the people who manage that training program between sort of this constant, having to stop the hemorrhage and 500 patients a day versus developing local knowledge and creating a teaching hospital.
Mm-hmm. Right, so it's actually impossible. That's why I need help to do this. I mean, all the on-the-job training stuff we do all the time. We have lectures and we do things on the wards with the staff. If we go on and make it into more of a teaching hospital, we would need more personnel. And that would have to be well-trained doctors, well-trained, say, clinical officers. We would need to add those people on to do, and either I would take more of a teaching role and less of a clinical role, but we would need personnel for that. So that's what I'm hoping. One of the things with Aurora opens up these avenues where we can get people interested in coming, and they can take on some of those roles. But I really want to see it happen because it's a huge need. We're really a drop in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. I think we had one more question. Lilith.
So your Aurora year is over. Are you going to continue your cooperation somehow with the Aurora initiative?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I want to continue. I need to keep the. I mean, for our own selfish reasons, I'd like to continue association with Aurora. I think they have a lot to offer. I like their ideas. I think they have tons of contacts that we can tap into. So I'd very, very much like to continue my association with Aurora. Very much love it.
So, yeah, okay, please.
You very briefly mentioned an incident which I would hate to get lost. And that is when there was a transfusion of blood transfusion necessary. Mm-hmm. And apparently culturally, this is what I understand, this is not being done, that the brother didn't give blood to mm-hmm. His sister and you gave your blood. This points to the fact that how important it is to know the culture mm-hmm. where you live, where you try to help, and if you try to do something good, which is not accepted by the culture, then it may turn out to be the opposite of what you want to do. A wonderful example is I was not directly involved, but I got to know many things about the Ebola crisis in West Africa. And much of the Ebola crisis could have been prevented if not the people from outside would have come in and say, this is what we do to kind of help you, but talk to the chiefs and talk to the local people. And how do you deal culturally with the death? And how can you prevent propagation of the virus and infectious disease and so on. So I would like, since you are a fantastic counselor
right.
from the Nuba region, I think it's extremely important that as Westerners, educated in the United States and from Duke University and the best education, as you mentioned yourself, if you want to go there, you really have to not have a good heart and try to help, but know how to help.
Yeah, this is a very, very important point. They call it, in medical training, they call it cultural competence. And it's extremely important. And I think for us as missionaries, or when you look at sustainability, which is a big byword in your community, you need to come and stay. And your education in that area takes several years. So if you come in, a lot of the NGO community, they do short-term things. They come in for a few months here, and then they go, and then some other country for 3 months. Totally different cultures. It takes 3 months just to figure out where the bathroom is. I mean, you need to come and stay and figure out what is the culture like in that place. It's extremely important. I mean, I've made all my mistakes early on. Then with time, you figure out what you're supposed to do, and the people won't trust you. It just takes time to develop this stuff. And I think in the long term, people that come need to stay to become culturally competent. But also the long-term solution is to train the local people to really take care of themselves. And then the foreigners is a bit of a, I don't know if I like that word, but the people from the outside that come in to help, they can come in and offer technical expertise. They won't need to be kind of down in the weeds with local stuff. They can come and advise the local staff maybe on certain topics where they are an expert on. And I think that'll be the cooperation in the future. We're so many years behind. I think we'll always need input from the outside, but input where maybe doctors from the outside will communicate with our doctors on the ground with areas that they're an expert in. But the doctors on the ground are the ones dealing with the day-to-day problems. And they're from that society. They know very well what the culture's like. And for me, I'm lucky because I have Nuba with me now day and night, and she's always telling me what I can and can't do. So it's extremely helpful to have my advisor here.
But before, I'd like to add one more question. So we are not only here in a business school, university context, but also in the capital, the political center of Germany. What is it from the political side that you would expect, that you would like to wish for in order to help your work?
Right, I mean, for us, obviously the biggest priority politically is to have peace in our region. It's an area which has never been at peace. I mean, Sudan got independence January 1st, 1956. They had war up until about 1974, had peace for about 9 years, then war again from 1983. So since 1956, they've had a few years of not killing each other. So this area really needs peace, and the development is not going to really take place until peace is there. So that all the focus and the effort should be on bringing these guys to the table and finding some agreement. The problems there are very complex. You can't, it's very difficult to gloss over things. They're very complex. And the people that are trying to negotiate from the outside really have to understand the context and the minds of the people before they can offer their assistance. So, but I think anything where people of goodwill, international community can come in and offer their support to bring these guys to the table and get them talking about peace, I think is worth doing. Once there's peace, things will go ahead in a decent manner. But the biggest priority now is to have some kind of peaceful resolution to the conflict.
My question is two parts. One is, if you'll talk a little bit about your partnerships, whether you consider them donors or who are your main partners. Is Duke one of them? And the other part is, I'm curious from the medical side, what do you see from a medical perspective that perhaps you don't see in other places that might be unique to your area?
Mm-hmm. So first, think about donors versus partnerships. Up till this past year, it's been really donor-recipient relationship. So we have money, we give you money, we tell you what to do, kind of thing. Now they all dropped out, so we don't have them anymore. It's funny you mentioned that word partnerships, because the guy that is in charge of a very small group that's providing all the money for our salaries, I said, John, what are you? Are you a donor? He goes, we like to call ourselves partners. So I just learned that the other day. So now we have partnerships instead of donors. It's much better to be partners, by the way. And your second question was about. Right. Yes, I do. I know. I don't know him personally, but I know who he is, of course. So for Duke, they don't. I would love to get Duke on board. I called them 2010, so before the fighting started, when we were at relative peace. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get my foot in the door with Duke. And they've got a big global health program. So I thought, let me call these guys and see. What I want to do is get one of they got fellows, global health fellows and residents, all this stuff. I thought, well, maybe they would want to come and be with us and do because they have some hospitals in Africa where they go and work, in Peru, I think, other places. So I wanted to have some of their fellows and residents come and spend time with us. Then we'd kind of develop a relationship that way. They were interested. I think they discussed it, and they said, no, we're not going to do it. And I think it was just because the word Sudan scares people. I think now, as long as there's conflict there, they won't send people. We just had a guy, he's a professor in both, he wears two hats. He's in global health and in the divinity school. He's a theologian. He just came out in December, and he spent a couple weeks with us. He stayed with me and my wife. And my goal of getting him out was to get my foot back in the door, and I hope that develops into something. But I would like to really have a relationship with a university like that can really provide us, if it's not manpower support, then some kind of financial, some kind of support, because they're a big player. In terms of disease, we have pretty much the gamut of medical and surgical problems. A lot of things that you wouldn't see in the U.S. Well, leprosy is the one that just comes to mind first off. We have a lot of leprosy in our area. There are certain pockets that are really where it's very common, and we see the full range of it and all the physical disability from that. We have the drugs. Thanks be to God, they're supplied through WHO. It's a very circuitous route. It goes to South Sudan. They'd have to get them flown up to us. But they're good enough, they supply the drugs to us. There are a lot of tropical diseases we don't have. A lot of, either parasitic or malaria, of course, is the number one problem. A lot of cancers you only see in this. There's a kind of cancer called a Burkitt's lymphoma. And there's actually a Burkitt's zone where you only see this disease, and you see it in children. We see a lot of Kaposi sarcoma. People know about Kaposi sarcoma from HIV patients. It's very common with AIDS patients. And if their skin tumors develop all over, they can develop in the mouth. We see it in HIV-negative children, 2-year-old children with this disease. I've never even heard of it before, and I've only seen that in Nuba Mountains. When I was in Kenya, we had tons of Kaposis, but it was all with our HIV-positive patients. This one we see in kids. We see a lot of hydrocephalus, where the babies get these water in the brain, and we're able to operate in those babies and try to do something with them. A lot of spina bifida, probably from folic acid deficiencies, so we operate in those children. Really, the full range of things. All the tropical diseases are there. Leishmaniasis and everything. Sportricosis, you name it. It's all there. So if you come there to work, so you come from Germany or the U.S. or France, it takes you several months to get up to speed with what we're doing. It's totally different. In Western diseases, heart disease is not there. You don't see heart attacks. Diabetes is there. We have diabetes, not as much as in, say, in the U.S. or in the Western world, but it's there. Obesity is not there. But diabetes is there. High blood pressure is there. And if you tend to see high blood pressure, it's astronomical numbers. It's 240 over 180. These ridiculously high blood pressures. We have very different conditions that take time to, not only learn those diseases, but also scale down to our limited pharmacopoeia and diagnostic abilities. We just got an X-ray machine last year, so we went the first 9 years without the X-ray machine. I've got a nice little digital unit, it's great.
So, Bishop Huber has an interesting question, but I have a remark to what you just said. And that is, the punchline of what I said is you need both. You need, the strategic level, far away from where the action is needed. And of course, we need you. I give you one example, Duke University, for the young people. By chance, I have been at Duke University. One of my best friends in the United States has been president of Duke University. He is now president of the National Academy of Medicine in Washington. He knows Dr. Kim very well, who is the president of the World Bank, as you know. So this is the way it goes. I always thought when I was young, you have to do your work, and the better, the better. But these synergies, relationships, you cannot do that. But if we get together, you come to the World Trade Summit, Professor Victor Zhou will be there. We don't know whether the president of the World Bank will be coming, but Angela Merkel knows him very well. And having the Aurora Prize You know, there's so many Albert Schweitzers around the world, and you have been an Albert Schweitzer unknown before you got the Aurora Prize. Now you're kind of distinguished. We can present you as the Aurora Prize winner, and all of a sudden you get the attention of these high-level people who can help. So I think developing these synergies, I think are so important, and that's where ESMT can help. Well, you have helped. I mean, otherwise we would not have been together, and let's talk about it later.
Right.
I know Bishop Huber is something very he mentioned to me, but I told him he has to mention that in public.
Okay, I wanted to ask Detlev Ganten whether he knows a German physician who has to deal with so many different illnesses as you have. So I'm deeply moved by the holistic character of your doing medicine, and I wonder how you bring it together, because the specialization and the new methods in medicine also reach out to you in the Nuba Mountains. That's clear. So that was the tension I was asking.
One part of it.
It was about. Then tell the
the other part of, I'm a hypertension specialist.
Yes.
So I don't know anything about surgery and all that kind of thing. And in theology, it's the same. You know, he is Bishop Huber, one of the most prominent, as you all know, most prominent theologians in the country. But of course, he knows everything about ethics and, the Bible, but he doesn't know everything. And if his, the people who come to your church and ask for advice, you know the intellectual part, but you don't know everything that people ask you. So you give your best advice possible. And this is probably your answer. You give the best advice.
That's right.
Knowing that it will not be optimal, probably.
Right.
With respect to hypertension, I can give you some advice.
Right. Well, I think to answer your question, it's kind of what I alluded to. Actually, my training is in family practice. So when I finished my training, I couldn't. That was in the U.S. I couldn't do any of these operations I'm doing now. But I learned over time, over several years. I was lucky enough to have several mentors along the way in Africa. Learned a ton there. So I think it comes back to the point I made, where you have the capacity to do much more than you think you can. So don't open your brain up and say, no, I can do it. It took a lot of time. And there's a thought that in order to be a surgeon, to have a level of confidence, you have to do 1,000 operations, 1,000 major operations. And when I was learning along the way to do surgery, I was thinking, gosh, will I ever be comfortable doing this? You know, every time I open the abdomen, I feel panic. And then around 1,000 operations, the light went on. I said, okay, I can do this now, you know? So there's some magical number. So I think you can do it. You know, all this, I do things that, because of specialization, other doctors are not doing, but if they came and were open to it and had the interest, they could also do it. It just takes time. It takes a lot of time. So, I mean, for me, I was 8 years in Kenya and really spent a lot of time learning this stuff and reading about it and spending time in the operating room. But if somebody else had the interest, I mean, a little bit of hand-eye coordination, it's not magic. I say it's not brain surgery, but you can also do brain surgery. You know, it just takes time and perseverance and effort, and you can do it. I think we have a lot of capacity that we never tap into because we're defeated. We say, oh, I can't do that. You lose confidence. That's something only he can do. He's the expert. I could never reach his level. You know, just go at it little by little, pick away at it, and eventually you find yourself doing it. So it's, I think that's the point.
So we have, actually we have the microphone over there. So, sorry, but we'll come to you in a second.
Sorry, I'll be quick. So you briefly talked about the political situation. You mentioned how the most important next step or big step ahead would be conflict resolution. But I was wondering whether you personally or the people who work there have been in conflict between their medical neutrality and working in a conflict context, maybe risking to be thrown out of the country by political forces. Yeah, have you experienced any of these risks?
Yeah, well, if we've experienced risks for being there in Nuba Mountains, is that right? Well, we're in a rebel-held area, so our immediate surrounding is we're protected by the SPLA North Nuba soldiers, But we've been at risk for being overrun on several occasions, so that risk is there. Our hospital's been bombed. The hospital proper has been bombed twice. The vicinity just around the hospital has been bombed several times. I think they did target my house at one point with a Sukhoi 24 jet, supersonic jet, and they just missed the roof, so I got out of that one. So I think we've been the target on several occasions. I'm there illegally. It's the truth. I don't have a visa to be in Sudan, so we're in Sudan, in rebel-held territory. So they're thinking, well, you're here illegally. We can kick you out by putting you in the ground, you know. So that is a bit of a risk. The issue with neutrality you brought up, and I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question, but that's actually a very important issue for us, neutrality. And some of these big donors that we talked about before have criticized us because they said we're not being neutral, we're favoring the rebel government. And I think we're not. I mean, we take care of all comers. We're just in rebel-held territory, so of course we take care of the rebel soldiers. But just to give you a little example of reality and what the situation is like there. This was a couple years ago, and one of the local military commanders came to me and said, hey, these guys, their barracks is about maybe a 40-minute drive from us. It's close. It's in our local area. It's very close to us. I mean, it's maybe, I don't know, how far is Samdurdu by kilometers? 15 kilometers maybe? I don't know, 15, 20 kilometers away, but it's close. And he was there with the soldiers, and he came to me and said, look, the enemy is approaching, and we're afraid they're going to attack tomorrow. He said, we have an artillery piece, but we don't have any fuel to tow it and put it in position. He said, can I have 10 liters of diesel? And we have some diesel there. I'm like, well, what the heck do I do about this, you know? So I'm like, well, crap, what if he's telling the truth and these guys come and they overrun his position and they come and they slaughter us all, you know? That's not going to end very well, and they kill the patients. I said, okay, here's 10 liters of fuel. So I gave him the fuel. So the next day, we're sitting there and we're going crazy. We hear boom, boom, boom. So it's the artillery piece repelling these guys, you know? So I thought, well, you know, he wasn't kidding. You know, they actually needed it to repel the Sudan Army soldiers. And so it gets very fuzzy. This issue of neutrality gets very fuzzy. And I think these donors that sit in Geneva next to the lake having a cappuccino don't understand what it's like when you live there. That's reality. I mean, I don't want anybody being killed, believe me. But I also don't want these guys coming onto our property and raping the women and killing everybody in the hospital and killing me. You know, it's not my goal. So there's not a clear solution to it. And but it's an interesting topic, I think, this issue of neutrality. What exactly is neutrality? And where do you draw the line? You know, do you give fuel to one of the vehicles so they can transport wounded soldiers? Is that violating neutrality? It's not that straightforward, but it's a very interesting topic, I think.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the one final question. I think.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I discussed with Nadine before. You know, a typical day will be I get up around 5:30. Just usually I don't have an alarm. I just kind of wake up, and then about 6 o'clock we go over to the chapel. We say a rosary on the way to the church, and we have a mass in the morning from 6:30 to 7. And that kind of helps to get me in the right frame of mind to start the day. Come back, have a bit of coffee. So at 7:30 we start working the hospital and start doing the ward rounds. So just go from the maternity ward to children's ward to female ward to male ward to TB leprosy ward. So go through all the rounds, see the patients. And you've got to do it pretty quick just to get through that number. I mean, much quicker than you would like to. So that's a negative point. If we had more personnel, we could take more time with each patient. But we've got to go pretty quick on the rounds. So get through all the rounds. Go from there, that takes hours, then go and do some minor surgeries. So often from there, we built up several minor surgeries by that point, whether it's a DNC or an abscess drainage or a stitching of a wound or something, a broken bone, go and do those in the minor operating room. Go from there to clinic, and then in clinic see some 50 patients, 60 patients there in clinic. That ends around 5 or 6, and then from there go and do administrative stuff in the evening. So all the email interactions, some donor stuff, the problems with the staff, this kind of stuff is in the evening. And then, of course, on call during the night for emergencies, call back and forth. So it's pretty busy. Psychologically, it's hard. I mean, some days you're just starting on the first ward. You're like, man, am I going to make it through these rounds today? I'm kind of wiped out. But it's amazing. You see the next patient and the next one, and before you know it, you're finished. You go to clinic and you just get through it. Yeah, I mean, I don't take care of myself that well. I think I make it through the grace of God, and I think that's just my most honest answer, because I don't think by my own strength and power I can make it through. Like I said, a few years ago, 10 years before I started Nuba Mountains, I would never think I could see that many. So I know my limitations. I don't think I'm superhuman. I think it's through the grace of God that He's seen I'm trying to do my best and I'm trying to be faithful. I get a bit of a nudge and I make it through, knowing that in the future things will be better. I've got hope that things will improve. We're training. We have three Nuba young men that are in school now to be doctors. We have several men and women that are in clinical officer school, like PAs, clinical officers, like a physician assistant. So we just got 3 back recently. We got 4 or 5 more that are in school now. These people all come back and really contribute. So I know things will lighten up. The workload will lighten up little by little. So I'm just trying to persevere through these years. But I mean, I think that's just my most honest answer. I think it's the grace of God that gets us through this time. There's nothing else I can say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these very personal, very moving, and also say very impressive thoughts. I think all of us can say we wish you all the best. Good luck with all the efforts on the personal side, on the professional side, and maybe in terms of the encouragement we can give, I would like to just ask all of you, us to give you a very warm applause for the appreciation and also the encouragement for taking your work forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.